Paradise has returned this week with episode 4 of season 2, and after 2 weeks, we're already halfway through the second season. The Holy Charge was an episode that I didn't expect to get as emotional as I did when watching it, and with the massive revelation about Teri during the ending and also the parallels between the baby being born inside of the bunker versus outside of the bunker. This was definitely an episode to remember. So with that, let's dive into this episode, break down the important details, and I'll explain what the ending could truly mean. Here is Paradise Season 4 Episode 2 Ending Explained. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. The importance of Annie's death and the different births. The main purpose in this episode was to allow us to see the build-up and process to the birth of Annie's child. Alongside Annie going into labour, we also saw the process of the first baby inside of the bunker in Colorado being born 3 years ago, and the stark differences but also the similarities to what we witnessed unfolding. For example, there were shots that were occurring from inside of the bunker where we saw what we were used to during birth, modern medicine and technology aiding in the birth of Louisa's baby. However, with Annie, we saw that she was literally on the floor of a Waffle House with no modern equipment or technology at all, just simply a rollout on the floor so she could be as comfortable as possible. There was a piece of dialogue that Annie said during this episode where she spoke of being alone. She said, "I've been alone for a very long time. I didn't trust people before the world ended." This explains why Annie not only didn't go with Link and why she was scared when she first met him, but it also explained why she was on her own in the past too. She'd spent a lifetime alone, and that was also why she was so fearful of the passers-by before they got to the Waffle House. The most beautiful moment in the entirety of the episode connected to the title of it, which was the Holy Charge, which symbolized the knowing that we are all capable of great change, of great love, or great promise. So when Xavier returned back to the Waffle House with a team of people that were willing to help, it showed that there are good people out there and they're not all cruel and out for themselves in the forsaken world. It was emotional because in the moment where Annie truly needed somebody in her life, she finally got that sense of care from a community like she never thought she would. Just like what Xavier said to her, there's nothing wrong with a little trust. Not only were the birthing processes being contrasted, but when Annie spoke of the world that the baby was going to be coming into, one that was destructive, full of pain, loss, death, and with all of the storms to come, it simply showed how the worries of the world that Xavier was speaking of in the past shouldn't and couldn't actually be seen as worries in the present day. Xavier was the eyes in both of these births, and in seeing Louisa's baby being born 3 years earlier with all of the advancements compared to what Annie had on the outside, he not only took on board what he heard from Cal Bradford when he said that babies were built to survive, that they were resilient, and how they'd been found in the rubble of earthquakes 3 days later and were still alive and well. His advice was the very thing that wasn't only carrying himself through the process, but also Annie when bringing the baby into this hostile environment. As I was watching the episode, it did feel like something was always going to go wrong with either Louisa or Annie, and shockingly, we saw that Annie was actually killed off. There were complications with the birth and she just simply wouldn't stop bleeding, and she knew herself that she was going to die, hence why she wrote her baby a note. In Annie's dying moments, she gave Xavier his holy charge, his divine purpose, which was to lead Annie's newborn daughter to her father inside of the bunker in Colorado. She said a few things like, "It has to be you will not let her be afraid of people." So it showed how, even in only the few weeks that they knew each other, she saw the type of character that Xavier was. We also saw this with the way that he put an extra blanket over her and how he walked alongside her when she had the horse, so Annie knew that she was leaving her baby in capable hands. In Annie's note, there was a phrase that connected to what seems like it could be the time travel element of the show that we're being introduced to, which was, love travels across death, across time, and that it bridges the impossible distances and binds people together that have never known each other. This is something that I feel is crucial to the development of the narrative and the story in this season of the show, especially with all this theorizing around Alex. It's looking like it's going to touch on elements of time travel, timelines, or alternative realities, and with those poignant words getting a focus in the letter, I feel they're going to have significance for sure. I do also wonder if the importance of Louisa's child being a boy and Annie's child being a girl, both being born in the same generation, is going to have some significance when it comes to the future too. We know that there's an impending storm on the horizon, not only because of the storm that Annie said that she had in a dream, but also due to what the scientist said when he mentioned that the tsunami was only phase 1 of the devastation. The temperatures are going to rise and the oceans are going to evaporate, and with the grandma on the outside also referencing the volcanic eruption in Sumatra that dwindled the population down to 1,000 people, and the entirety of the planet now descending from that one small group. It feels like something like that could be the very thing that's on the way again, so it's just one extra theory for now. A poignant piece of dialogue in this episode was, "Outside, the little things will kill you," and that was a worry that Annie had. This is an important line that I think will also come back into the equation later on down the line too. Xavier isn't used to this world that he's just fallen back into. Annie was somebody that found her way of navigating the world that she came to feel the repercussions of, and Xavier hasn't truly lived and breathed it yet. The clues about time travel and Sinatra's plan. During this episode, there were a few clues about the new time travel elements of the show. The first was actually during the recap that played before the beginning of the episode. It was a scene from season 1 where Sinatra was talking about the death of her son, and she said, "Everyone said that time would help, but time's making it worse because it's taking me further away from when he was here." This shows that it very much feels like this power that Sinatra was draining from the bunker for her own project that could potentially be connected to taking the world back to a time before the damage was done on the outside could also be centered around potentially being closer to her son that had passed away. She knows that there's an impending doom that's on the horizon, and it does make me wonder if the bunker's even going to be able to survive that, so I feel like her personal project could be connected to that too. In the early part of the episode, we saw that Xavier was reading a novel by Mary Shelley called The Last Man. This book was written in 1826 and it's set in the late 21st century, which is focused on Lionel Verney being the last surviving human on Earth after a global plague wiped all of humanity out. This is something that feels very reminiscent to the situation that Xavier Collins is in, and whilst not necessarily a plague that he's experiencing, he's living through a different kind of human extinction. There was also another piece of dialogue that was spoken between Xavier Collins and the grandma, and she said, "We all forget how close we are in time, how our sins become our children's burdens." With there being 2 children being born in this episode, and the focus being on Annie's because the father is Link, I wonder if the child could quite literally hold on to the sins of her father, as Link's plan is to essentially kill or destroy Alex inside of the bunker, depending on if it's a person or a device that's involved in some form of time travel. Link seems set in his ways on what he's planning on doing, and with him and the group knowing of Alex, it makes me wonder if he's from the future in some way. His name isn't on his identity card and we don't know his actual name. All we know is he's called Link because it's the main character in Zelda, and as we know, within Zelda, Link is an explorer, so that's why it makes me think that he could potentially be an explorer of time. Could Link potentially be Calvin, or maybe could he even be Dylan if Sinatra managed to go back far enough and prevent her son from dying? If Sinatra is successful with her project, the project that we don't truly know about right now, it could have opened up a paradox where Link from the future could come back to where what would be the present day. It's mind-bending, but it could be the case. The thing that I find myself questioning the most though is the fact that whenever Link and Xavier have that vision of each other, the camera changes and it's almost like there's 2 different versions of the one person. I can't quite place how they're connected, but I'm hoping that we'll get some more clues soon. Right now, I'm almost just kind of brain dumping it out there because I feel like there are a few different possibilities that it could be. So until there's more clarity, that's probably what I'm going to keep doing. What happened to Teri? Now, I can't actually believe Xavier Collins made it all the way to Atlanta on horseback with Annie's baby, and Teri wasn't even there. Instead, we saw somebody that was seen to be close to Teri over the past few years and had been like a sister to him. This then put the question out there on what actually happened to Teri following the radio broadcast, and where could she be? The guy that Xavier met with said that she was taken from me, which is a relatively loose term, and it's definitely a deliberate decision by the writers. The only people that we know have been on the move are Link's group because he was headed towards the bunker, so this makes me think that one of the only logical explanations is that maybe they took her whilst on their way to Colorado. We know that Xavier and Link seem to have some kind of bridge due to the visions that we've seen them have, whether they've seen each other in the past or not, but there's a connection between them in some way which I think could end up tying into the future of the story. I'll touch on that in the next section. My review of the episode. I thought this was a really strong episode of the show. I don't think it's the best in the series, that sits with Season 1 Episode 7, but this one's definitely up there. It was a deeply emotional piece where I didn't expect to well up or feel upset by the end of it, but I did. It was a brave move for the showrunners to decide to write out Annie's character so soon after we'd just been introduced to her. It makes me think that her death is something that's going to be extremely important to the wider plots. I am quite shocked that the show seems to be going down this route that's focused on time travel. I say that because it can become very complicated very quickly, and there ultimately ends up becoming so many different possibilities and outcomes. So I am intrigued to see how they're going to keep up with it. To be fair, Dan Fogelman is the man when it comes to connecting different stories and plots from time periods, so I think it's in safe hands. I would also say that this season focusing a little bit more on core human values that are ingrained within is something that I'm excited to see developing too. The scene where Annie died was one of the most heartbreaking things that I've watched on TV in quite some time, when Xavier was cradling her and saying, it's okay dog, as she was slowly dying, and then also when she was screaming and telling them to stop because she knew that she was going to die. It was just so upsetting. When she said to Xavier, I'm not scared anymore, the moment of comfort that she got with Xavier showed the type of person that he was and that he made a large impact on her life. I also thought the song choice of Can't Help Falling in Love was a powerful one for the scene to have as well. Xavier Collins really reminded me of Randall Pearson in this episode because of the emotional nature of the scene that was unfolding with the character. The tears, the comfort, it was just peak Randall Pearson in This Is Us. The end twist with Teri being gone was something that I didn't quite expect, but I am intrigued to see where Teri actually ended up. I did find the quickness of the time period that it took Xavier to get there to be a bit strange, especially when it took Link 9 months to get to Colorado, all whilst having vehicles. The score is something that I absolutely love in this show, and it's the same composer that worked with Fogelman on This Is Us. There's actually music underneath quite a lot of the scenes that we watch unfold, and it just complements the tone and mood so well, and it just establishes the setting and the environment for us to just feel like we're there. I am really enjoying this season of the show, even though it does already feel relatively complicated, but it does make me a bit gutted that there's only 8 episodes of the show this season, because this is when I wish that there'd be something like 10 so we could just get a bit more time in the universe. It was recently announced that Paradise would actually conclude with season 3 of the show, so that means we've most likely only got around 13 episodes left in the entire show over the course of the next couple of years, so I'm intrigued to see where this season's actually going to go. So, there you have it, Paradise Season 2 Episode 4 Ending Explained.